First of all, thank you so much for all coming here and agreeing to do this panel. Hopefully you'll have some interesting questions, but I want to start with just a brief introduction, like super brief introduction of your name, what you do on the team, so we know what to direct questions, and yeah, go ahead. I'll get started.
Hi, I'm Mikhail. I'm developer at core team, do open source.
All right. If there's anything specific you work on?
I mostly do GraphQL.
I'm Marissa. I'm a product manager at Gatsby, working on products.
I'm Marcy Sutton. I'm head of learning.
Thank you all. Who I am.
Hi, I'm Kyle. Started Gatsby like 4 years ago, and one of the founders of the company Gatsby.
Hey, Chris, working on themes in MDX.
Sam Bhagwat, also one of the founders of Gatsby, the company.
My name is Dustin Schau. I work on the core team. I deliver the asset prefix feature, the least sexy feature ever, but people really need it.
2 people or more. That's okay. That's very nice feature actually most of the time. So first of all, we use Gatsby from Ettig a lot. We use it for all of our conference websites. We use it for our main websites. I think we've been using Gatsby for like 3 years or something. And since then, it's been dramatically changed and improved. So like I'm a personal fan. And Kyle also, we were speaking of React Machine a couple of times.
Yeah, 2017.
2017. When we were young and a couple thousand people. All right, so before we start with like more technical questions, I'm really interested to hear like the story of turning open source into a company, because that's not usually what happens with a lot of open source projects. But actually getting VC funding and like having a vision of making something big that millions of people will use initially. How did you come up with this idea, and like what led to that decision? Just a brief background.
Yeah, so there is. I mean, yes, there's a lot of open source projects. So way more open source projects than there are like open source projects that are companies. But yeah, if you can figure it out, it's a very nice way to do it. It's much nicer than working on your spare time every day money. But yeah, so I mean, when I was thinking about, I started Gatsby as just sort of a fun project like 4 years ago now, 2015, and at the time it was kind of very much scratch managed sort of thing. I wanted to rebuild my blog using React, and I wanted to, I was working on a startup, another different startup at the time. So I wanted a website for my startup. And so that's what I built it for. But then when it went time to go, so that startup failed. And when I was thinking about Gatsby, my startup failed, and I was thinking about what to do next. I strongly considered going full-time on Gatsby. And I didn't want to go down a rabbit hole of working on an open source project forever and not making any money, and wondering why I did that. So kind of like a sort of a carrot to myself. I was like, well, maybe this could turn into another startup if it got big enough, sort of thing. And so that's kind of what let me justify, I guess, spending the next year working on it full time. And yeah, so I don't know. So basically, what you need to do to turn an open source project to a company is it just has to get big enough and like have enough people using it for real things. There's a lot of ways to make money around open source, but basically you just need a lot of scale. So yeah, that's what happened. Luckily, Gatsby turned out to be right in the middle of a huge trend of React and GraphQL. And a lot of people were looking for something better than kind of existing CMSs. So we were kind of like right in a big movement, yeah, so just feel really lucky to do that, and then find VCs who really kind of saw the same vision and believed in what we were doing, and yeah, find a great team who also are very interested in kind of making this happen. Yeah, so it's a really fun journey to see something start from very little to much larger, and feels. I don't know. It's kind of like a nice feeling too, because like every day it feels still like we're just getting started. Like the potential for Gatsby is massive, and it feels like you have kind of the right moment and the right team to make something really special. So hopefully Gatsby's on all of your company's websites in the future, and everyone's doing cool stuff with it.
Thank you. So one of the main things that usually when I speak to people about Gatsby is like the first comparison they make is like to WordPress. Like how does Gatsby compare to WordPress? Because in the beginning it's mostly like generating blogs from empty files, like you said, and that's also how we use that. And like the comparison would be like, okay, here's the web, here's the big CMS in the world, like runs on 30% of the internet. How do you first of all, how do you see it compared to WordPress, and is it a fair comparison at all? And how do you fight this perception of we are not like WordPress?
So are the comparisons positive or negative?
Both sides.
So the question's like, how do they compare?
Yeah, how do they compare, and is it a fair comparison? Is the first question.
So I would say right now it's not directly comparable. We're working towards being like a direct replacement for WordPress. But if you look at what WordPress does and what Gatsby does, a big trend right now in CMSs is that they're going headless, which means that the presentation layer is being separated from the kind of content storage, content administration part of it. So you can think of like a CMS, traditional CMS is having three parts, like presentation, how you actually run the site and turn data into HTML and whatever, and then the database or wherever the data, the content actually lives, and then the screens to maintain that and run permissions and workflows, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, so where Gatsby kind of fits into that story is that we're just the presentation layer, and by focusing on that, we do an incredibly good job at creating an amazing development experience and really, really, really fast websites and really kind of sophisticated stuff. So if you compare, so we're not comparable against WordPress as a whole because it's doing all three of those things, but we can compare Gatsby's kind of website performance and development experience directly, and we blow them out of the water. I think it's pretty clear. Our site's way faster, developing with Gatsby is way nicer. But by itself, of course, we're just part of the puzzle. So it's actually interesting, though, is that we're seeing more and more people use WordPress and Gatsby together. So to kind of get the best of both worlds, because actually that's what WordPress is always focused on, is being an amazing, kind of really easy to get started and having a really nice UX around creating and maintaining content. So they do a great job with that. But running the site, you're probably going to get hacked in the first hour or something. Sites aren't very fast. Development is weird. Plugins and themes are just a big mash of PHP code that you don't know what's going on. Anyway, so it's actually very nice if you kind of combine the strengths of the two. And what we're seeing is that kind of how things are developing is that there is this sort of separation now of concerns, to use overused term. Anyways, so that headless CMSs, they're these managed services, cloud SaaS services that you just click a button, you get a new CMS, and they're exceptionally easy to get to use and to run. And then Gatsby is kind of also serverless. You just want to build and throw the files on something. So we're kind of getting to this world where you can run a large, complex website and not have to maintain any services. So it's pretty cool. So I would say it's better, but we're going to. Okay.
What I'm interested in is to hear from developers what are the major challenges, technical challenges that you face when building current versions and thinking about the future. Because there's obviously challenges for managing open source, and running the business, one thing, but also feature requests from people or technologies that are ever changing, or what you're dealing with.
The business an open source developer or as a Gatsby developer?
As a Gatsby developer. Well, as a developer that develops Gatsby.
Right. So as a developer, we have basically two jobs that we need to do. We need to maintain the community so that everyone wants and continues to contribute to Gatsby, and we also need to be a good comparison that Kyle always makes is that Gatsby is the government. We're trying to maintain the common infrastructure, the big country that is Gatsby. So we want to, but we can't do it alone, because government can do everything alone. But we need to do infrastructure, we need to build roads, we need to build railroads. So we need to do big infrastructure projects, and at the same time continue to make sure Gatsby is a great place where people can develop their own stuff. So like half the time we review PRs, we solve issues that people have in, like answering their requests. The other half we need to do big projects, like big kind of infrastructure changes, so that we have like a future. So future for Gatsby is good. Like this is how we did like themes and skin manufacturing, asset prefixes. But also like big feature that required like deep inside in Gatsby. That's really hard to kind of get from community contribution. So the biggest challenge is balancing those two. We need to make sure that the future for Gatsby, like sort of the core of Gatsby is great, but at the same time we want to encourage as many community contributions, as many community work as possible, and to keep Gatsby be like a welcoming, inclusive place for everyone.
Also says.
I think another challenge with documenting Gatsby is that there is sort of an edge to how far we should go with documentation. Like there's lots of concepts that apply to general web development and Node and GraphQL, and all of a sudden we're having to document the whole internet. And that can get pretty challenging and a lot to maintain. So kind of finding where that sweet spot is of the edge of how much documentation we need is something that we're constantly reevaluating. And I know we want to add more about GraphQL because that is very core to the experience and it's not always very well understood. So we have some projects coming up to improve core workflows and make sure that the learning experience is the best it can be. Because that's oftentimes your introduction to Gatsby, and we want that to be a positive one no matter what your skill level is.
And who writes the actual documentation? Is it developers, or we have a separate team just dedicated to writing documentation?
A lot of us do. I'm the head of learning, which is a pretty technical role, so I'm doing some of it, like a lot of other team members. Core team will document their own features, and a lot of community members will contribute, which is super cool. Like, we spend quite a bit of time reviewing pull requests just to keep up with the volume of community contributions, which I've worked on Angular before, and it can be a fire hose trying to keep up. But I think we've got some tools in place to keep things moving and not stagnating. So it's really all of us that do it.
And I have like specific questions because what Gatsby is basically trying to do is trying to like abstract all the complexity of the boilerplate basically way, but still providing a leeway for whoever needs that, like the advanced use cases. So how do you maintain this balance of like conventions and over configuration, and how do you decide like what APIs to be exposed, to what extent, and like how do you like maintain this balance between making it simple, like no configuration at all, but still providing this like connection points, extension points to more complex use cases?
I could just say what comes to mind is that having good defaults so that you don't have to configure everything seems to be the way that it works now, but giving you control to override things, like with themes, that progressive disclosure idea that Jason mentioned means that you can customize things, but you don't have to. So having that control, I think it's optional, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, another way of putting it is like 90% of people need the same thing, and so that's our default. And then 9% of people need something strange, and those are all plugins. So there's like 800 and something plugins right now for Gatsby and growing, daily. And anyways, a lot of those are like, different tweaks to our Webpack config. So like add TypeScript support, or add, Lodash compilation, whatever, like Lodash Webpack plugin, and on and on. And then, 1% of people just need something custom, and then we have a really nice API for like directly manipulating Webpack. But yeah, generally speaking, people are fine with the defaults, and then sometimes they need plugins, which wrap up common changes, and and then for advanced use cases, there's always kind of a escape hatch to do whatever you want.
For me, I always compare it to like create React app, which is like the one extreme, like we don't let you customize anything, or like unless you eject, and then it's like basically you do all the configuration. Whereas like I more like your approach, but again, sometimes it's okay. Like, to what extent do I allow to to customize whatever I'm building, and then like because the APIs become more complex, and there's like you open Gatsby, and there's like node configuration, and there's like client configuration, and all other things. So that's interesting.
Yeah, another way we think about it is that we have this sort of stack of primitives. So, you can go all the way down to the lowest level, but most people can live at like higher levels of abstraction, and then as you need to like dip down lower, you can. So you think of a lot of programming like that. It's like you can like just use garbage collection, but if you manually manipulate memory, you can do stuff, that or whatever. So we kind of think of those things like layered abstractions, and then themes is kind of like the new highest level of abstraction that Jason was talking about. You'll be able to just install one package and have that in a directory of markdown files, and you can have like a full-blown, really sophisticated site with like search and multiple pages and whatever. Anyways, but like if you want to have very low level control over Webpack and Babel, the adding plugins, and doing whatever you want, you still have to do that.
Okay, so now more like organizational questions. So basically most of your team is working remote from different parts of the world, right? So how do you organize work across the team? Do you have different people working on same things, or like everyone just stays? How do you organize task management and separation between teams?
Yeah, so we try to focus on cross-functional teams. So we really believe that making sure that we have a core understanding of the outcome we're trying to drive toward, we set that together, make sure that we have an understanding of it, and then from there, myself and the other product manager, Preston, we work with the teams to create kind of what that map is going to look like, and then just make sure that that is communicated out clearly and let both the core and cloud teams and design research run with it, because obviously they're experts in their areas. So as long as they've got the map that they need to follow to get there, they're able to then talk to each other and figure out the best solution for the problems that we have to achieve the outcomes we need.
And do people work like in small teams, or just one-person projects, or how does it?
It depends on the project. So we have quite a few people in cloud, several people in core, and then Chris is working on themes with I think 2 other people.
Yeah.
Okay, and do you have any examples of very, very weird or huge project and websites or apps that are built with Gatsby?
Yeah, so we have our site showcase. So I think it's just Gatsby.js.org/showcase. That's a great example of like a number of like real world, out in the wild sites built with Gatsby. So there's some examples in there, and then we've seen examples, of sites with Gatsby that are 50K pages or more. So Gatsby is being used for every bit as much of like real apps as anything else. So yeah, plenty of examples out there. React.js.org is one of my go-tos. Like it's pretty amazing seeing the React team and like the tool that we all love and use using Gatsby. So that's really rewarding and just incredible to see. As far as that, we're seeing some like shifts into sites like e-commerce. So Flamingo from Aries is a really great Gatsby site built in with like e-commerce. So it's every bit like a dynamic, real React application like you'd expect with React. So yeah, I think
that's at shopflamingo.com.
Yes.
Shameless plug for Flamingo. Good websites, running on Gatsby.
I'll add one more as well, which is one thing that we may have all seen, the Colin Kaepernick campaign, the His Just Do It campaign back in September of last year was built on Gatsby. So we actually just heard about that by like somebody kind of tweeted out like, hey, this is a Gatsby site, and we looked at it and then we kind of got in touch with the agency afterwards, and it turned out they had like built this sort of this campaign site in about 2 weeks using Gatsby. So we were like shocked and kind of amazed.
So now, more on technical questions. How do you deal with upgrade paths from version to version? It's like going from point 1 to from 1 to 2. It was a pretty painful process.
What was it? So generally, especially now, we're in a pretty good group with Gatsby 2. We do like a patch release almost every day, and then a minor release for these like meaningful, impactful features like asset prefix, schema customization, etc. So in general, our approach is that we don't want to break your site ever. So Gatsby 1 to Gatsby 2 did have a few breaking changes. We like heavily documented them. We produced like a migration guide from Gatsby 1 to Gatsby 2, and we even wrote a couple code mods, very similar to what the React team did with like Gat 15 to 16, so that you can upgrade that pretty seamlessly. So our approach always is that we want your site to be working as long as it can, and we want to keep building out great features that you love and that your users love.
Our intention, honestly, is we want the next major version of Gatsby to have no code breaking changes. They're just going to like bump all the major versions of Webpack and Babel and stuff like that, so that we don't have to break anybody's site. We just give them the latest and greatest.
Yeah, just a faster, improved site just by upgrading to Gatsby and getting those like internalized updates for free.
And I wanted to add something. Because one of the questions that one of the people asked in the forum is like, what's the practice for automating updates? Because like in WordPress, you can just press one button and then it automatically updates, especially for people who are not developers. But it seems from what you're describing is like you really need a developer to upgrade from one version of Gatsby to another one.
I mean, you could set up like Renovate or Greenkeeper and just merge the PR. Because generally, it's just updating a dependency, and you're good to go.
Gatsby's different than WordPress because like a Gatsby site doesn't magically stop working if you don't upgrade. It actually should keep working for the remainder of all of our lives, assuming browsers don't break something. So there's no a Gatsby site is a collection of static assets, so it's not going to die or stop running or get hacked or anything like that. So so if you're doing a Gatsby site for a client and they don't need to change it, then it'll be good forever.
Yeah, this is one of like the primary advantages of using just static assets. Is like the web platform is specifically designed to be backward compatible to what you were just showing off the Space Jam website, and it still runs. That was like in 1996. Yeah, and so that site is probably going to be up for the foreseeable future because like the W3C is very, very stringent about not breaking the web. So yeah, like you said, you shouldn't ever need to update a Gatsby site unless you're like making changes to it.
Yeah, and within major releases, we also have, over 1,000 now tests. Yeah, so 1,000 plus tests. We use Cypress for all the runtime stuff. We test extensively all the different APIs. We have a bunch of example sites that we build on every PR and compare their output with what they should be, et cetera, et cetera. So it's very unlikely at this point too that we'll ever break your site. So generally speaking, you just upgrade.
I want to talk about the future for a little bit. Like, what's your near-term future, or like version 3 and version 4, and that's what your 10-year future, if you ever think about that.
Themes are part of our near-term future. Themes are sort of like, as Jason has said in his presentation earlier, a version of Create React App for Gatsby. Right? So, like we were talking about before, you can sort of just push dependencies out as NPM packages, and then you can use Renovate or something to just click a button and upgrade your site to the next version. And one of the things that we're thinking about with themes, and specifically schema customization, is the data abstractions. And what we're doing with the data abstractions is creating interfaces that can be sourced from anywhere, right? So you have a blog post interface, and it doesn't matter if it comes from the file system, it doesn't matter if it comes from Contentful or any other CMS. And then past that, we want to be able to take those blog post abstractions or those data abstractions and push them into CMSs for you. So when you pull down a Gatsby site with a theme and you bootstrap it, it goes out and it creates something in Contentful or something on the file system for you, and it doesn't matter where you're getting it from.
So from the commercial side, we're also working on making it easier for teams to collaborate. So that's specifically with being able to use things like Gatsby Preview, which makes it easier for content editors and developers to work together by reducing that feedback loop. So one of the things we're focusing on in the near term is making that collaboration between content editors and developers as easy as possible by removing the friction and go-between that they have right now. So we're working on things like Gatsby.js, and eventually we'll be working on builds as well.
Yeah, we're putting a big focus on the speed of builds, because one of the biggest blockers to using static sites is that as the site grows, the build times get longer and longer and longer. So we've had Anthony on our team is doing a bunch of work with making the builds like incremental, so we only rebuild what actually changed instead of having to rebuild the entire site. We're working on a lot of other improvements, being able to parallelize the builds across multiple cores, all sorts of really fun stuff that is going to make a really big impact on the speed of Gatsby's builds, which kind of feeds into that same thing.
And the last thing on that is that the whole goal of that is not only to make it easier for teams collaborating, but also for large teams. So right now, we can solve a lot of issues for smaller teams, but we of course want to make sure that we're taking care of people that have quite large teams that need a lot of help talking to each other and making those changes.
Yeah, our pie in the sky goal is to be able to build Wikipedia.
I'll chime in a bit more on that tenure, on the tenure vision as well. I mean, one of the things that we know as we build more and more complex websites, right, is that there are additional pieces that come in. There are like maybe A/B testing services that plug in, or form services, or maybe personalization or authentication. I guess this is more like a 3-year vision than a 10-year vision, but we'll go with it anyway. There, like you have, and a website is ultimately like bundling all these things together, right? But like a lot of it is just sort of like gluing it in here and without sort of any visibility of like, hey, here's how all the data is flowing through the system. Here's what each thing that the marketing intern drops into the Google Tag Manager impacts the performance, and seeing all the seeing how everything that you do in your website affects every other thing that you do. And ultimately, because like Gatsby is the place where all of your different sources of truth, your data, your code, your content, like everything comes together. Ultimately, we will be providing sort of a way for you to see that, so you can optimize your website along all the dimensions that matter, whether it's conversion rate, whether it's performance, whether it's your development workflow, whether it's how your teams collaborate together. Ultimately, when going back to your original question, when hopefully the good people that the good comparisons between Gatsby and WordPress are kind of asking, is Gatsby going to sort of be an all-in-one kind of encompassing solution? And the answer is, over time, we'll be pulling in kind of functionality that enables someone to simply have all the functionality they need to build a very sort of advanced website in a very easy way.
So one question that we got from the audience regarding exactly what you're talking about is, will Gatsby move toward becoming a CMS like WordPress where no programming is required, or will it stay as a framework for building static websites?
Well, one of our goals is we always want you to be able to go down to the lowest level with Gatsby. You're always going to be able to go in and play with the configuration and change things. But what we're trying to do is progressively introduce abstractions so that the barrier to entry gets lower and lower. Our intention is for somebody who is fresh to code to be able to stand up a website in Gatsby in minutes, and then as they get further and further in their careers, be able to dig deeper in the stack. And we want to go further with that to allow people who maybe have no interest in code to be able to stand up a really good site without having to write any code at all. But then if their site grows and they need a professional developer to pick it up, to not have to pay for that expensive migration from Wix or Squarespace to a developer-friendly platform. So we see this as being something that can handle the full spectrum, and we're spending a lot of time working on those abstractions to make sure that it is very it's a seamless experience as you move down the stack of abstractions.
There has been talk about a desktop GUI experience that I think could unlock some of those workflows. I wanted to add something to the previous question though about the 10-year vision, because I think if we say what you want and like throw it out to the universe that maybe it'll come true. What I would like to see, it kind of goes back to your original question about a WordPress comparison. It would be super cool to see Gatsby so ubiquitous and dominant on the web that everyone's choosing it because they want to use it. And something I'd really like to see is accessibility, like trust around plugins and themes, so that we can try and make more accessible sites by default and make sure that our ecosystem is stepping into that as well. Because I think there's a huge opportunity to try and right some of the wrongs from the WordPress version of that, where plugins and themes, there's no guarantee of accessibility. So that's what I would really like to see in that long-term vision.
So we'll do two more short questions from the audience. First one is, we're all talking about how great Gatsby is for a lot of things, but what Gatsby is not meant for, and where you should not use it.
Yeah, don't use it if you want a slow website. But more seriously, Gatsby is not ideal right now if you're trying to build like hundreds of thousands of pages. It's not ideal if you're trying to like rebuild a bunch of search engine friendly like millions of products or something like that. Those are use cases that we're looking to overcome in the future. But right now, if you've got a whole lot of pages and a really high update frequency, that's probably not a good use case for Gatsby.
But you can use React as an app within the website.
Absolutely. If you want to build like an asynchronous, like you want to load the data on the client side, then you can absolutely like set up GraphQL subscriptions and do all that updating very fast. And that actually is a good move. Like
We actually support 1 trillion pages now.
But the trade-off there would be if you need it to be SEO indexed or like available without JavaScript, you wouldn't get any of the benefits of the server-side render. But it would be kind of like using a slightly more opinionated and powerful pre-React app to build it if you did it that way.
And last question we want to end the panel with, are you all hiring?
Soon. Not the exact moment, but yeah, later this year we'll be more good.
All right, so
Can I say one thing? Yeah.
So also, I know the rest of the team will probably hate this, but it would mean a lot if you guys came up here too. I think that we have an awesome team here who's building out incredible products, and I think they deserve every much credit as any of us. And also, I want to say thanks everyone for coming too. This has been an awesome meetup. We're just so stoked to be here.
that's kind of big. Picture?
It's live.
I should play now.
I was just going to say that we'd love to have your contributions. Join us.
Yeah, Gatsby will give you anybody who contributes to the repo, whether it's a typo fix or a feature, we will invite you to be a maintainer or a contributor on the board, and we'll also give you a coupon code to buy swag. We have socks, we have dresses, scrunchies, hats, t-shirts, all sorts of things in there, and we would absolutely love to have you as part of the community. We also offer pair programming. If you want to sign up for an hour with one of our core team members, just go to our community section on Gatsby.js.org, and you can sign up for a slot.
And we love hearing from you. We need to hear from you in order to make things better for you. So whenever you've got a problem, you need help, we're always here to reach out and understand, how we can make Gatsby better for you and for your teams. So research is a really important part of what we're doing as well in order to give you what you need.
Well, I want to say a big thank you for a really awesome product. I think a lot of people use it, and a lot of people that they use it, I know they really, really love it. So great job on that, and thank you so much for coming and for answering all the questions.